to Simpler. We are three pastors, husbands, and fathers on a journey to make life simpler by holding Jesus as the core for every belief and practice. This journey has shaped us to be more like Christ, freed us from the shame of failure, and encouraged us to a deeper love of our Lord and God. We invite you to join us in the discussions that have shaped and continue to shape our lives.
One of the greatest things we've done recently in our budget is have a car maintenance every month. Because there's been so many times, to be fair, before this year, I'm scraping by. So there's no budget for it. It's just what do I need to sell to, but now
when you buy a couple of cool old Jeeps, you have to have a maintenance budget.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
You knew that going in.
I did know that going in.
Because as you were driving back, your Jeep or Aiden's, which one were you driving back? Yeah, as you were driving that back and we're on the phone and you were like, man, pray that I make it back. Because you had a bad tire on the trailer or something. And then you're like, I know we're gonna have to put a lot of money into this, but that's just kind of, I think, what going into those things.
But anytime I've gone in to get an oil change or something now, which I usually do a lot of it myself, but anyways, take my car in, I'm not dang it, I gotta find this money. It's hey, just pull it out of that.
There you go.
Car maintenance fund. I think that's what people miss about budgets is that it's not restricting, it's actually freeing.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you're telling your money what to do. You're not letting your money tell you what to do.
Absolutely. I like budgeting conversations. It's fun. It's a lot more freeing.
I think it's funny that people say I don't like budgets.
I think it's the same way that people, you're exactly right. People don't view it. People view it as like dieting. Mm-hmm. You tell me this budget tells me I can't do what I want to do and I want to go do what I want to do. And as opposed to understanding it as freeing from exactly what you're saying. So
let's just say you're making 10 plus grand a month, and let's say you're not living paycheck to paycheck and you got a bunch of extra money. So budget it.
Yeah.
So budget yourself $3,000 a month to spend on whatever you budget it.
Yeah, exactly. There's a finance show that I watch every now and then that he'll talk about that. He's like, listen, I'm not being mean. He's like, I'm just telling you appropriate mindsets to have towards your money. He's like, and where you're at right now, it feels mean because you don't have any income. He's once you have a lot of income, it's going to feel really wise and really smart.
Who you're watching.
Yeah.
The dude out of Austin?
Yeah. So his personality is really intense in general.
He's very intense.
Yeah.
But he's also every now and then he's like, are you stupid?
Yes. He'll call people out hard.
And the answer is yes.
Yeah. One girl was like, she goes, I've just been putting everything on my credit card. My parents gave me a credit card, and she goes, I just maxed out my credit card. And he's like, you have to pay that back, right? And she goes, what?
No idea.
It's like, but my parents gave it to me. And it's it's not money. It's like, she goes, I was taking my friends out to dinner, and I was like, oh, I got this one. Yeah. And
got my credit card.
Yeah.
Want to get good credit, you spend it on your credit card, right? Yeah.
Dave Ramsey makes a good point about that. He said the FICO score is there to put you at a place where you can get more credit. And you get more credit so that you can increase your FICO score so that you can get more credit. And he's like, it's an unbreakable cycle. Yeah, it is kind of a scam.
Yeah. Which is a great point he makes as well. As a lot of people stress that, but I need to get my credit card. But why? Just so you can spend more money. You're not at a place to spend any money at all.
Yeah.
It's get smart with what you're doing. Then we can focus on your score if we need to. He's like, but hopefully at that point we're buying cars cash. We're taking care of things that we don't need credit for.
Yeah.
So
it really is. It's not budgeting. It's a different perspective on money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Brian, we're not talking about money the whole time. What are we talking about today, man?
We are not. We find ourselves now approaching holiday season, right? And there are a lot of things that over the next couple of months people will be getting together for. So you've got Halloween next week. You've got Thanksgiving in a month. It's at the end of November this year. You've got Christmas coming up, New Year's. So a lot of opportunities to gather together with your friends and your family and to socialize and to be together. And we kind of just want to look at how do we as believers approach this season and what are some practical things that we can do to approach this well.
Ryan, aren't the holidays just about me?
Golly, Pierce, I'm so tired of that question.
Most selfish person I've ever met.
Well, actually, Pierce,
you're such a peddler of the holidays.
I'm gonna call your wife and be like, listen, if you need a way out. No, obviously, Pierce, we don't think that life is about us. It's about Christ. And so one of the things though that I think happens is just in the busyness of life, where we were talking just a moment ago about debt and finances, like those kinds of things come into our world and they serve as distractions. And then I think sometimes it derails us, not intentionally, but just the busyness of the holidays will derail us. And some of us have healthy homes and family lives, and we're going to be fine during the holidays. Other people get really stressed at this time of year because of the people they're going to be around that maybe they're not comfortable with. Yeah. Other people are stressed for financial reasons or different things, So it's really easy to let the perspective over the next few months shift away from who we are in Christ and what it means to live for the Lord and to honor Jesus in this time, and to be overwhelmed by just the busyness of this season.
Yeah.
And so how do we approach this? Micah, you want to kick us off?
I think there's some things that come to mind. One is Mary and Martha. Yeah. When Jesus is at their house teaching. I think, to your point you just said, I think a lot of times we treat the holidays like Martha, where we're so concerned about making sure everything's just right that we miss an opportunity. Obviously, we're not sitting at the feet of Jesus as he's teaching, but miss an opportunity to gather with either other believers in community, or people who aren't believers. We miss an opportunity to be with them for the sake of the gospel. And so what's that?
Well, I know it's not holidays, but what you just made me think of, and I've not thought of it this way before, is weddings. I watch so many couples spend so much energy for a single day and so much money for a single day. And the bride and the groom are like, we're just ready for the wedding to be over. Mm-hmm. And they're so stressed as they get closer and closer to it, because they're trying to make the perfect party, the perfect thing for all their friends and all their family, that they forget to just rest in the moment and enjoy the moment.
Enjoy it. Ooh. Let's mark that down as another, because that'd be a fun conversation to have.
I'll add it
later. Okay. But that's the first thing that comes to mind, is that to your point, we tend to get so busy around the holidays that we miss an opportunity for the gathering of all these people. I mean, that's really what happens, right? Yeah. I mean, you could celebrate the holidays solo, but it just wouldn't have the same effect, right? Yeah. Like I think about Kevin McAllister walking past the windows in Home Alone. Yeah, all these families that are getting together on Christmas Eve, and he's like so sad walking back to his giant house, in the suburb of Chicago. Which side note, did y'all see that house was for sale recently?
No.
Yeah, it was.
But what I saw somebody recently, they're like, what did Kevin's dad do to afford this house? Yes. And it's like what in the world? And take the whole family to Paris and
it's intense. Yeah. So, but point being, I think probably we would all agree that celebrating solo is maybe one of the most depressing things you can do. And people who have had to do that can probably attest to that. There is something about the gathering of people that is in our culture, what the holidays are about. So if we miss an opportunity to have a gospel mindset in those gatherings because we're so worried about the busyness and making sure everything's right, then I think we've missed an opportunity, a great opportunity for the gospel to be present. I think we could just walk through the holidays, if that's cool with you guys.
Yeah, start us.
So Halloween, right? I hate it. I've always had this distaste of anything that has any kind of correlation with Satan at all. And I don't think we can negate that there is something on the face value of Halloween that is that way. We were watching football on Sunday, and I mean, the commercials were promotions for those scary movies that are going to be shown on all these channels. So that doesn't come from light, it comes from darkness. So I also don't think that every time we celebrate something around Halloween, it means that we're celebrating Halloween, right? So I know this is a hot topic for people, but there is something true in the agricultural community where they would harvest and then celebrate the harvest, right? So that's not always correlated with the celebration of Halloween.
Is that why some churches call it the Harvest Festival?
I think so. Yeah, because that's what it was.
That's the get around?
It's the fall. Probably yes. I'm not 100% sure though that all of them are get arounds.
Yeah.
Because there really is a harvest, right? Actual fall celebration of the harvest. Someone can make the argument that was probably closer to Thanksgiving. Sure. My point is I don't like Halloween, but I also don't mind I don't mind fall festivals. in that regards. Because
we're doing one next week. Yeah.
Obviously, I don't mind it because we planned it, right? But I think if we're
also not making it a Halloween thing.
No,
like we're having burgers and s'mores and how come I can't think of it? Cornhole.
Cornhole,
yeah. Hot dogs and s'mores. I was like the pitchy sandbag thing. I was like, my brain was like,
I like that.
Like,
we're playing pitchy sandbag tonight, boys.
So I think what has
I want to call it that forever.
I'm gonna make you a set of boards that says pitchy sandbag on it.
Please do. That would be so great.
Funny enough, I've never made cornhole boards.
Really?
No, never made them. I need to. But I think sometimes as Christians, probably a lot of times, we get so caught up in the argument of whether or not we should celebrate the holiday. Or around Halloween, whether it's a fall festival or should we take our kids to the school. They don't usually call it Halloween.
No.
They usually call it the fall festival.
Fall festival, trunk or treat.
Trunk or treat, yeah. So the trunk or treat actually is probably more correlated, I'm guessing, because of the trick or treat. Right? So, but again, personal opinion, I don't mind that so much. Because I think that's not how our culture views it, which we can talk about in a second. I will say this: if I don't care if someone's bothered by it and says we shouldn't have anything to do with anything that has any kind of correlation with anything pagan in that regards, just make sure you are consistent across the board in your entire life. Like if you're going to say no candy at Halloween, that's fine, but please do not put up a Christmas tree. Because the beginning of the Christmas tree was hanging cow testicles and I think other animal testicles in your house to pray for fertility to the German god, whatever. Like that, maybe that was, I forget which god. Anyways, point being, like, I don't actually mind it as long as you're consistent across the board. Don't put a Christmas tree up and then say I'm not going to have candy.
No Easter bunnies.
Right.
Nothing. Colored eggs.
Nothing. No. I mean, we could go on about
no cherub at Valentine. Keep it Saint Valentine. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's Baal.
Yeah.
People probably don't know that, right? So I'm not. My wife probably hates this. I actually am personally more bothered by Valentine's Day than Halloween because it's that like tricky. It doesn't seem like it's anti-Jesus thing. Yeah, but it very much is. Like the Jews, they worshiped that God. Yeah, and God hate. So, anyways, I feel a little bit more intense about Valentine's Day.
I think it does come to. You alluded to it already, but I think it does come to cultural use.
Yes,
as well.
Our culture doesn't view Valentine's Day as a worship of Baal. No, most people don't even know that Cupid is Baal. Yeah, So I don't personally mind it because that's not how our culture views it. But again, I don't mind if someone doesn't want to do it. They just need to be consistent across the board. So I think sometimes we get so caught up in that particular argument that we forget, there's a bunch of people gathering. Yeah. What if we use this cultural gathering as an opportunity for the gospel? Yeah. I think that's the difference in mindset I think we should have. It's not like trying to figure out, I mean, maybe if it's a big deal to someone listening, make it a big deal for you. Yeah. If it's not a big deal, then I think you should not worry about it. Yeah. Don't worry about it. I'll say it this way. If you have a problem celebrating Halloween, you shouldn't celebrate Christmas the way we celebrate Christmas. Right. Because you think it's about Jesus, but you have a Christmas tree up.
And if you're consistent with all those things and that's where you're at, great. That's fine. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't mind it. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. I don't mind it. Just be consistent. I think I have not ever met somebody. There probably is. I've never met somebody who's been consistent. I've always hear people saying, I don't like this thing and I don't like this thing. And usually when I say Christmas tree, people are like, what are you talking about? Just because people aren't educated enough to know that this is where it comes from. Yeah. They still say the word Easter. Yeah. Those people, not knowing that it's from the German pagan holiday Ooster. Yeah. That the only reason we say Easter as Christians is because King James, the fool that he was,
included it once.
It has to be called Easter. There's no translation. It's not actually in the original text.
No, it's Paschal. It's Passover.
Yeah, but I'm saying the word Easter isn't in the original text.
That's what I'm saying is like every other place that word appears, it's Passover. Right. And in that one place, he translated it as Easter.
And then we still say it. So that's what I'm saying is like people, I don't mind.
We've come to call it Resurrection Sunday.
Yeah, because I don't like that either. So, and I'm acknowledging I'm not being consistent in everything, but what I am doing is trying to do my best to make everything about the gospel.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't mind if people use the word Easter, again, because I don't think that's how our culture views it, right?
Yeah.
But I also don't mind changing the way they think about it by saying, like, this is not actually what we're celebrating. We're celebrating the resurrection of Jesus, not some German pagan holiday.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not going to, if someone says Easter, I'm not going to be like, you're an idiot.
Yeah. And if somebody's like, I won't do anything on Halloween, okay, totally fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Again, personal preference, but if you're going to have the preference, then be consistent across the board. Like I personally, I don't like anything around Halloween.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people like scary movies. I don't think those are necessarily correlated, but I do think it's funny that everybody watches scary movies around Halloween. Like, tell me how that's not a correlation.
Yeah. Well, yeah, carry on.
So just culturally, there is something where, like, I think we have to go, these are gatherings. These are holidays our culture says, let's gather.
Yeah.
So if we change it, again, you can have the conversation about what you should and shouldn't do in these holidays. But I think if all you're thinking about is if you will, the personal morality of whether you should do certain things or not, you might miss an opportunity in all these gatherings for the gospel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what I'm after.
Yeah. First Corinthians 10, go and eat at the pagan's house and eat the meat sacrificed to an idol. Unless the pagan says, hey, we're worshiping an idol through eating this, then you don't eat.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's
for the sake of the gospel.
For the sake of the gospel.
Yeah.
And you go to their house and you fellowship with them and you eat the meat that was probably sacrificed to an idol so that they will ultimately come to know Christ.
Yeah.
And so
Unless they say,
yeah. And then
we're eating this because it was
offered to this God.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, I can't do that because I worship Christ.
Right.
And then it's still about the gospel.
Yep.
So that's what it has to be about, is the gospel.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that we could, to your point earlier, we could miss it with all the busyness and with all the conversation of what we should and shouldn't do.
Yeah.
Versus having a gospel mindset and all these things and saying, how can I use these gatherings as an opportunity for the gospel, either amongst believers as an encouragement in community, or non-believers as an opportunity to be with them in the hopes that those conversations continue to turn towards Jesus more and more.
Dude, I'll tell you, like, you talking about, like, just the busyness of it and how we can stress ourselves out around the holidays. So, like, Thanksgiving, Michelle's entire family's here. We've done it with her family the last few years. Last year, the year before, my mom and her husband Greg came, and we do it on paper plates, and we have, red Solo cups that everybody can write their name on because we're watching football the whole day, and that way. Yeah. It's pretty low key. Everybody
you guys put those cups on a ping pong table.
We do. No,
lined up with ping pong balls you bounce into.
Everybody, you should see Michelle, man. She's not just. But everybody brings something so that no one person's doing it all. And I think about how my mom would, like, labor over Thanksgiving, and then we would get out all the fine china, and it was once a year. We used it once a year, and then we had to wash everything by hand, and the whole thing was just a full day. It was exhausting.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things that you're like, man, like, that's, I got stressed. I didn't enjoy Thanksgiving as a kid because it was so much work. Now, I wasn't even doing the cooking, but Haley and I would do help with a lot of the washing. And I was a kid, I was little, so I'm sure I wasn't helping very much, but my memory of it is,
it's a lot.
That was a lot of dishes we had to wash.
Yeah.
Funny side note, my wife's grandma got us fine china when we got married, but I mean, we're not ever going to use fine china. So
yeah, you don't strike me as fine china.
It was in a box for a long time.
Put your Chilerianos on fine china.
So it was in a box for we literally didn't even open it. Like, it still had the tape on it. I want to say like 10 years plus into marriage, and we were moving some stuff around, and I found that box, and I was like, let's open it. Let's just see. And there was some silverware in there that is amazing.
Really?
Nice.
That we had for all this time. I had no idea. I'm thinking, like, just the china. It didn't occur to me she bought so, like, we still use that silverware because it's awesome. Like,
that's awesome.
But I was like, dang it, all this time I missed.
That's funny.
But I like the paper plates.
Yeah, I mean, like, we make it. I think as Christians, we try to make a lot of things, or as people, we try to make a lot of things too hard.
Let's just change the perspective, because I think you could have a busy day with a lot of prep and cooking, still with the mindset of the gospel. So, like, so here's my, like, wisdom thought.
All right.
If this feels stressful for you, change it.
Yeah.
Do paper plates and red Solo cups and ping pong balls and whatever you want to put in it to bounce it. But like, you know what I'm saying? Like do plasticware, do a simpler meal, or buy it from somewhere and have it brought in and catered, and then you just serve it, right? If it's stressful, maybe you enjoy the process of prepping and cooking.
And there are a lot of families that do
that. Do it with a gospel perspective. So let's just say you're a parent, like involve your kids in it in a way where you're spending time with your kids that you don't normally get to, right?
Yeah.
Maybe families coming over. Make sure, like part of the reason we designed our house the way we did is because you can be sitting at the counter while people are cooking and prepping and you're all together. Like that's how you can make the day, even if it's a lot of prep, still something that's about community, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
There are my wife's stepmom, I don't know if she loves, but she just does dishes. Like even when she's at our house, I'm like, awesome, because there's never a dirty dish in the sink. Like like doesn't matter who's using dishes, she's gonna wash it. Like if it's there for 10 minutes, it's like she sees it.
That's
so
how
like
Debbie is.
she just does the dishes, right? So but and she probably enjoys it. In that regard, like there's people who just like to clean, you know, Bobby Grimes is on the mission trip. Like she's asked, I need to plan this for her. I forgot to mention it. But she wants to come deep clean the church because she loves it. And I'm so glad there are people that love deep cleaning because I'm like, ugh, that sounds terrible.
Yeah.
But she loves it, right? So there's people who love those things. Do it with the perspective of the gospel. Like you're in community, do all this prep with the mindset of, I want to be around people. Don't do it with, I just want to have something prepped that's perfect so we can have this perfect meal. There will never be a perfect meal.
No.
Something's going to happen that's going to ruin your perspective of what the perfect thing is. But what you could do is say, we're together.
Yeah.
I like prep. Let's make all this stuff, but let's do it together with people for the sake of the gospel. Maybe you have someone coming over for Thanksgiving that's you don't get to see a lot. That's someone that doesn't know Jesus, and involve them in that for the sake of the conversation and the relationship. Like it's just it sounds really simple, but I think it's a whole different perspective on the holidays.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, and I think we get really overwhelmed too with the feeling that we got to spend all this money and make everything like. I mean, I know. I have different friends who've addressed it different ways. I had some friends who back in the day they were like, Jesus got 3 presents. That's all my kids are getting, each year.
Is it 3?
Gold, frankincense, and myrrh was their argument. So,
yeah, but there was a lot of wise men.
Yeah. But they brought him gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So it's a lot of gold.
That's what I was wondering. But like, is it, we don't know if like each person brought them gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like all of a sudden now it's not 3 gifts. Yeah. You're talking about 3 items. Yeah. So if that's the premise they want to use, all right, I've got 3 things my kids are getting, but they're getting them from 50 different people.
Yeah. And then
that's 150 gifts.
Yeah.
You freaking idiot.
And then there were people who are like, something they want, something they need, something to wear and something to read. There are a lot of people who follow that. And so like there's these 4 gifts. And so
what if their kid's blind? Braille?
I understand the desire to try to not go crazy.
Sure.
Yeah. And
i.e. a budget.
Right. Yeah. And so people are trying to, figure out those things. But I think that we can lose sight of like what you're talking about, just the time together as a family, the time together with one of the things that we've done 4 of the last 6 years or 5 of the last 7, something like that. We did it last year again. It had been, I don't think we had done it the Christmas before, but Christmas Day, I've announced it at the church and just said, anybody who doesn't have family in town or doesn't have anything, come over at 10 for breakfast. Because by that point we'll be up and we'll have already done our presents. Yeah. And so last year I made like a whole bunch of pans of cinnamon rolls and bacon. And this year I've got a
I have
waffle.
somewhere to be, but I might come over for some cinnamon rolls.
This year I've got a waffle iron. And so like, and I was already telling Michelle like 3 days ago, I was like, I have some ideas that I want to try for some new cinnamon rolls, like a new recipe. And she goes, ooh, I like our recipe that you're already doing. She goes, test it out at Thanksgiving and we'll vote on it. But like,
don't mess up Christmas, Ryan.
But I'm already thinking about like just
because
that.
you like that stuff.
I do.
Yeah.
And me that I'm a guy that like I like my space and I like my bubble around me. But I also like, man, if I can cook for some people and have them come in and just have them for an hour or 2, just take a load off and be like, hey. And there was a couple last year that texted me and they were like, man, we're not going to be able to make it because we left town earlier than we thought, and we're sorry. But there were people who were like already like, man, I'm looking forward to it this year, and I'm like, that's awesome, that's great.
And I think it's a gospel minded perspective of you doing that. I don't think it's wrong for people not to do that.
I'm just saying that's how I do it.
I know,
that's my practice.
I do think it's a good idea to think outside of your comfort zone. Yeah, for the holidays. All right, so here's an example. We've never done this before. This will be the first year we do this. Is our boys are going to have
one present each.
They only get three. They only get three. Not really. They will have. We haven't decided how much yet. They will have a certain amount of money that they're going to find a person or multiple people to either give the money to or buy presents for with that money for Christmas. Because what I want my kids to have is a perspective of others rather than themselves. Yeah. So I don't think that means that has to strip away the joy of waking up on Christmas morning knowing there's presents or Christmas Eve whenever you open presents. Like, I don't think it has to be one or the other. I think you can have both. You could have
for sure
the joy of like opening presents, and you could also have the joy of giving to people who are in need. Yeah. And so I think that's where sometimes we get so locked into the idea of what the holidays are supposed to be, we miss the opportunities for that. Like, okay, let's just say someone's like, I don't have any money. How can you still have the perspective of others in the midst of that, right? Don't think that just for the holidays, it has to be about you spending money on other people. What if it was you caring for someone else? What if it was you finding out someone had some other need that you could meet that's not financial? Like, it's just a different mindset rather than like me. It's what you said at the beginning, Pierce. But Ryan, like, I really think there's a lot of people who really do think, but this is about me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Instead of about others. Okay. And this one's a little bit more harsh. And I haven't been in this situation, so it's going to sound even harsher. Let's just say someone is solo for the holidays. What if your mindset was, I feel a little bit of sorrow. I get it. But like, what if your mindset was, how can I serve others during the holiday? That might be the best way for you not to feel lonely and depressed on the holidays is by serving other people, right? It's an others mindset, which I think is a gospel. Gospel mindset with the intention of the gospel, I guess.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, I think that like you Ryan have said, like this isn't your preference. Your preference isn't just to be around people nonstop. You're actually not bothered by being around people. You say that sometimes that you're not. You just need your time. You need your time where you're not.
My space, yeah.
So it's not actually out of your personality tendency to say you're going to have people over on Christmas. I think you would probably admit this. You would be completely fine if no one else showed up at your house on Christmas. You know what I mean? Like,
no, I think that would make me sad.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, pretend you hadn't done it before.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is like, I don't think you mind.
I'll put it this way. When people invite me over for plans in the evenings and then they call me and they're like, hey, I canceled plans, I'm never sad. I'm never sad.
That's what I mean. Like, you don't mind. No. You don't mind being just within your bubble.
Nope. Yep. I have a lot of things that I enjoy doing in my own space, in my own head.
And maybe what you meant by it would make you sad about the Christmas thing now is because you've already experienced the joy of sharing that with other people.
Well, I enjoy cooking. I'm not a great cook, but I enjoy cooking. I enjoy I mean, it's interesting because I do care about people and I do want to serve people, but I also, like you said, I need my time. So like, preaching for services on Sunday afternoons now, I go home and make myself a sandwich and I do sit by myself while my family goes and eats with Michelle's entire family on Sunday afternoons. And I just sit in quiet for an hour and I need that. Like, I love that. And so for me, it's a matter of, if I know, I've got this thing this weekend where I'm going to be with people all weekend, I'll preload that and take a couple of days for myself leading into it.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to do that thing. I just have to.
Your comfortability though doesn't change your perspective of the joy of being with other people for the sake of the gospel.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think it's just, again, I think it sounds really simple. I'm just not sure that that's the pervasive mindset amongst believers.
Oh, no. No, it's because, I mean, we've touched on it kind of throughout this whole episode, is that the holidays are very much culturally defined, and there are cultural expectations. And because we have had those expectations put on us our entire lives, we are 100% conditioned towards it. And it's not something that Christ can't free us from. We've all been freed from it. And we leaning into the truth of Christ and into the ability of the Holy Spirit in the midst of this, we've seen a greater possibility, which we've talked about the entire episode, of just utilizing these cultural gatherings for the sake of sharing the gospel, building up for the sake of the gospel, and serving for the sake of the gospel, and all of these things. And so I think it takes an intentionality for that to be broken. One of the things that I've thought about, I can't even talk at all, thought about throughout the entire episode, is how trapped I felt like in college going to other family events, because I've realized something about my personality is that, like, I think I'm very much a 9/8, like, for Enneagram people who know those numbers. Like, if I come into I'm not necessarily afraid of conflict, but I'm not going to be like the one who initiates it necessarily. And so I come into a situation like, well, this is so-and-so's house. This is the way they do holidays. I don't feel that I shouldn't stir the pot. I'm not going to do these things. And so I remember feeling so played, because I was like, I want to just utilize this for something better. And I also had a very law-based view of the gospel back then anyway. So like there was all these different things plaguing me, and then I would just leave feeling defeated, either feeling stressed because of holidays or feeling like I could have done more because of the holiday.
Oh, like you were supposed to do something while you were there?
Yeah. Well, like, and because I wasn't hosting, I didn't feel like I had the ability to shape the way that the people who were being hosted thought of the holiday. Or I would feel like I didn't have a place to speak up, because this is so-and-so's house and they're hosting and they're doing this. And I know that's just weakness on my own part. Like, that's ignorance and weakness on my own part. But I just remember thinking, like, because I think now where I am with a proper mindset towards the holidays, I'm also just so excited because of my personality to know, like, I'm hosting this. Like, we're having people over at our house for Thanksgiving. We're having a chunk of time at our house for Christmas. And so I'm so excited to kind of set the tone of that. But that doesn't change the fact that, like, I could have taken advantage of a lot of those opportunities back then as well. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
So anyway, I think back to what I was saying initially, I think one of the biggest things of just why it doesn't feel as simple as it should be as believers is because we are so conditioned one way our whole lives. But lean into Christ and he can break that. Lean into Christ and he can change that. And trust the Holy Spirit. And it might be one of those things where you say, okay, cool. God, help me start back at square one. This is what's happening this year. How can I be a means and a light of your gospel?
That's a good way to say it. Cause I think you're right. I think expectations can kill it.
Mm-hmm.
Here's an example that doesn't have to do with the holidays. I used to hear pastors talk about conversations they had on planes. And I remember, do you remember this? Like, in conferences, I feel like pastors would often talk about planes as if when you sit on a plane with someone and you're stuck with them for a few hours,
captive audience,
you have to talk about Jesus.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, feeling guilty when I would be on a plane and, like, I wouldn't talk to people about Jesus. And then later I was like, why would I feel guilty about that? Like, if the conversation comes up, fantastic. If not, like, I don't remember anything in the Bible about, like, hey, when you're sitting next to someone for a long period of time, make sure you talk about Jesus, right? Yeah. Because the perspective is, like you're saying, like, I created an expectation, or somebody created an expectation for me.
Yeah.
That's not a good expectation. Because if my heart is to glorify Jesus in everything I do, then as I'm walking onto the plane, I'm the same person that I was when I wasn't on the plane.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, why didn't they talk about having those conversations standing in line on Christmas Eve at Walmart?
Yeah.
You're there for hours with people and standing in line. Why is that not the same expectation as standard? You know.
Yeah.
Side note: I am not a patient person on Christmas Eve. I've recognized that. I've just acknowledged that, and I do not go to stores unless it is an absolute emergency. Because it is not it's not a good situation. Anyways, but I think you're right. Like, why is that the expectation? Why don't you just go into those gatherings going, you know what? I'm going to go be with people.
Yeah.
And if you're someone whose heart and desire is to glorify Jesus in everything you do, as conversations shift and shape towards the gospel, you're going to take advantage of that and talk about it because it's who you are. Yeah. You're not forcing it. You're not sitting down at the table with 15 people and being like, all right, listen, we got to talk about this now. We got to talk. Like, that's awkward, right? That's
we're all going to be for 4 hours. Get ready.
Right. And so what? So you can walk away feeling like you had a conversation about the gospel?
That's a great point. We too often compartmentalize and section out times of our life where we are expected to be evangelists or expected to be the portrayers of truth instead of just being people who love Jesus and taking advantage of opportunities. And this is one of those things of what we're saying for this whole episode is having a mindset of, hey, in our culture, we gather during these things. Let's continue to have a mindset for the sake of the gospel in the midst of these big gatherings that are very much shaped in one direction or the other by our culture. We can take advantage of that as people who already have a mindset for the gospel, bringing that into the holiday with excitement and joy that you get to be around people.
Yeah. So actually, I guess it's more so like we're saying, let your entire life be a mindset and perspective that I want to glorify Jesus.
Yeah. Here's
an opportunity culturally where there's a lot more gatherings than normal.
Yeah, over the next few months.
So take advantage of those gatherings with the same mindset. And maybe the Mary and Martha example is apt, because I think what happens is sometimes we move from the Mary to the Martha. If we can say that. Like we move from someone who's an attentive listener to Jesus to someone who's like, I got all these things I got to do.
Yeah.
I got to get them done. And so we can miss opportunities. I'm not just talking about gospel conversations.
Yeah.
I think just being with people, if your perspective is I want to glorify Jesus with my life, I bet there are people that I've been around, for example, in the disc golf world, because I've heard them say this, who will say, there's something different about that dude. I don't know what it is. Who don't know that I'm a believer or that I'm a pastor or anything like that. They might just go like
is it because you're half Filipino?
Probably.
Is that what they're picking up on?
They're so intrigued. Like, how is that? That guy's way taller than I thought Filipinos were supposed to be like. But I think it's that. It's just an opportunity to be with people. And then just like, what if, I like the way you said it, Pierce. What if your prayer going into the holidays was, God, give me opportunities as these gatherings happen to encourage people that are believers and to have gospel conversations with the people who aren't.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That way it's like shaping your mind and perspective.
Yeah.
That was a huge shift for me. I forget when we talked about it, but in a past episode, in regards to evangelism, was we had talked about there's not necessarily this like overarching expectation on believers of like, it's your job to now go convince people to be believers, like, and understanding the freedom that we now have in that. And that thought process just was so persistent, or that teaching, that line of teaching was so persistent throughout my childhood and being a youth, that like I would approach all of these different environments, school, holidays, work, everything is like, this is my mission field. And it wasn't a gospel mindset. It was an obligation that wasn't necessary. That's not true. Like that in regards to these things. And that's we kind of set that in stone. I think I'd been kind of gradually been freed from that for a while, but I forget what we talked about, but the language that we used, during that episode, I want to continue to purvey or teach people this way of realizing that now we have opportunities in life. Now we have freedoms in life, and we can take that freedom. And right now we all have the opportunities to be husbands, to be fathers. And this is an opportunity that we have to be a light for the gospel and to preach the truth. And now realizing in all of these circumstances, we've been freed and empowered to be vessels of the truth of Christ. And that's not an obligation if we have to prove to God that we're a good Christian so we can go and save souls, but rather God being now a part of the family of God, God has empowered us to be his lights and to serve and to love and to show his grace and to show his kindness and to open our homes and do all these things wherever we are in life, realizing that we have opportunities. And so, I think that's been a big shift in my language, at least over the past few months, maybe a year or so, of like not making the Christian life or the mindset of the gospel necessarily a stressful obligation, but a free opportunity.
Yes. Yeah, because it doesn't make sense to make it an obligation.
No.
Well, and I don't know that it's. I agree with what you're trying to say. So this is not a correction of that.
Gotcha.
I'm just trying to I'm trying to think through the language of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So obligation, we would say no. This isn't an obligation, but you said an opportunity, and I'm wondering if there isn't a different way to say that, because. So you prefaced our previous episode. We were just talking about investments in crypto and stuff like that, and it's something that you think about a lot. And it's anytime a conversation about investments comes up, you're going to talk about it. And I don't know that you are actively looking for opportunities. It's that it's such a part of your thought process that it's the answer to the question that someone's posing about, hey, how do I invest?
I'm rolling with you.
So instead of it being, I'm looking for opportunities, if we come to the place where Christ is truly the core of who we are, then it's just who we are. And I agree, can't be obligation.
Yeah.
I agree, we're closer to the heart of it when we say it's opportunistic, but I think it's more like breathing.
Yes.
That it's just like I breathe because this is how I live.
No, I think I do think that's a better way to say it than opportunities. Because every conversation, you're not going, I'm looking for an opportunity, because it's just who you are, right?
Well,
like, so if someone, all right, let me flip it, because I think you're right. I think a lot of times people are hesitant to have a conversation about Jesus because they're worried about people's reactions. They're worried about how they'll be received. I mean, historically, it's not been received very well.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there's a hesitancy that people have in that regards. I don't want to like mess up a relationship with somebody, or I don't want someone to feel awkward towards me.
Not to pick on those people, but if Christ was everything for them, the concern for the person's response wouldn't even factor into it.
100% agree. 100%. I think I'm acknowledging what is the reality for most people, right? So this is what we're trying to do, Ben, is move people from a place, because I think you're right, Pierce. Like what you're talking about, I think is the beginning of this, of Ryan, where you're getting to. When you shift, Pierce, from a place, when you said you shifted from the place of obligation to opportunity, I think that's actually the beginning of the process of moving to where you're talking about, Ryan, where you should be.
I was going to clarify some of my language just so we're on the same page. I think looking for opportunities was still an imprisoned mindset of like, I have to look for opportunities.
Oh, okay.
So what you had brought up was, whenever the conversation gets brought up, you're going to talk about it. To me, that's having an opportunity. Like, he just had an opportunity. He wasn't looking for an opportunity in the conversation, but our whole life is so like, I 100% agree the way culture uses the term. I just want to clarify where I am with the term, which I agree we should speak more clearly to the culture. Where I am with the term is, now instead of my life being a obligation, my life is an opportunity. Like, I'm going to have relationships. I'm going to have these things. And those
I would argue that there's not a single thing that we as faithful followers of Christ that engage in that's not opportunistic from that perspective.
And that's what I'm saying. Yeah. But the way that
everything
culture
is
uses
opportunistic from that perspective,
which, if we're looking at it from that positive, then that's where I'm coming from, is looking at that positive light instead of the obligation. For me, when people would say, go out and look for opportunities, now I'm imprisoned again. Now that's an obligation.
Because you're scanning things for where Jesus might fit.
Versus your whole mindset is.
Instead of it being Jesus fits everywhere.
Exactly.
You guys are going to love this. I think here's the distinction. I think one mindset where you're talking about Pierce, the obligation is a law-based mindset.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a mindset of, this is something I have to do because I'm a Christian. It is my obligation, my moral obligation to be someone that God is pleased with. If there's ever a chance for me to talk about Jesus, I have to take it.
Better take it, yeah.
The flip of that is someone who rests in the grace that God has given them in Jesus, that they're freed from slavery to sin and death. They've been empowered by the Spirit to live a life for the glory of God. And because that's who they are, they will talk about it.
You can't help it. You couldn't stop it.
In wisdom, because this is who you are, right?
Yeah.
So the distinction between the two is, one is a law-based mindset and one's a grace-based mindset.
Yeah.
One is empowered by self, by flesh. One is empowered by the Spirit.
Absolutely.
And so I think, I'll use me as an example. I was compelled at a young age to tell my mom's dad about Jesus. He was not a believer. I believe he probably died not a believer. But I was compelled in middle school and high school. I did it twice. We're just like out of the blue. It was the most awkward thing in the world. We're eating breakfast a couple times.
I wrote mine a letter.
Yeah. Both at the same restaurant in Clovis, New Mexico. And I was just like, I couldn't stand it any longer. I got up and I just was like, I just talked to him. I was like, I just need to tell you this. And it was not a good conversation. It was not a well thought out conversation. It wasn't clear probably. But in that moment, it was like I was so compelled to do that. And that, I think, was a growth moment for me, because I was learning to be...
From a cultural perspective, most people might have said that wasn't really an opportunity that presented itself. That was just you saying,
I'm building, right? So don't hold on to what I'm saying yet. Building. So for me, that was, I think, a moment of growth, of learning to be sensitive as the Spirit was leading me in a conversation. I had to learn to not just pipe up on my own because I thought this was the right time, but like the Spirit's like, go.
Yeah.
Right. And I had to learn, and I feel like I've been learning more and more to just listen as the Spirit says go.
Right.
Yeah.
As I continue to grow in faith and realize more and more that and was more convinced by the renewing of my mind, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And begin to rest in grace. Then what happened is like, I'm like super sensitive now to when those conversations need to move one way or the other.
Yeah.
It's like physically, I don't think this is probably for everybody. Physically, I feel a difference in my body when I know a conversation needs to go one way, and I feel it in my body when it needs to shut down and not need to not talk at all. Like, it becomes very clear to me. And sometimes I listen, sometimes I don't, right? But for me, it was a growth process of learning to be sensitive to the Spirit.
Yeah.
And it was when I got past the mindset of obligation that began to like really ramp up, because now it's not like, I'm not thinking, all right, I've prepped for this. I've studied for this.
Right.
I know the words to say, and here's the opportunity. I'm going to take it. It's like, no, this is just who I am.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's an incredibly gracious conversation where I'm like, oh gosh, yeah, let me tell you about some cool things God's done in my life. Like sometimes it's like at a disc golf tournament when I overheard someone who's proclaimed to be a believer say that the Mormons believe in the same Jesus.
And you're like, no.
There was no hesitancy when the Spirit was like, deal with that.
Yeah.
And it was like fire and brimstone. And I was like, allegorically kicking the dude in the nuts over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I was like, bull, that is not. Anyway, so sometimes it's one way or the other, right? But I think what the difference is I'm not thinking, oh, I have to say something now.
Yeah.
It just comes out because I've
It's
learned
the overflow. Yeah.
I've learned to be sensitive to the Spirit's leading. I think there's some wisdom that the Spirit is guiding me through, because now it's not obligation, because now it is who I am.
Yeah.
And I think I'm still learning in that.
Mm-hmm.
There's been quite a few conversations I've had this year where I'm like, oof, probably shouldn't have had that conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Recently.
To be fair, I think it's different because those were all believers. So this wasn't necessarily, never mind. It is the same. Never mind. I recant. It is the same. It is the same because they're gospel conversations.
I was sitting with a small group of men the other day, and we were talking, and it was not a Christian meeting. It was just a few of us that happened to be in the same place, and one of the guys asked about another guy that wasn't there, and somebody said, well, he's going through a hard time. I think he's going through a divorce. And then somebody else said, oh man, I didn't know that. Like, man, sorry to hear that. And the guy who said, I think he's going through a divorce, looked at me and he goes, why does that happen so much? Why do so many divorces happen? And I said, you're asking me? And he goes, yeah. And I said, because people don't understand that marriage is supposed to be about the revelation of Jesus Christ and the gospel. I mean, like, you're asking me?
I'm just going to tell you.
Because people don't understand that it's about Jesus.
Yeah.
And inevitably, if you don't know Jesus, or if you don't understand it's supposed to be about Jesus, inevitably, it ends up being about yourself. And at some point, if you continue having it about yourself and not Christ, it will dissolve into something that's not okay.
And if you're not believers, you can't.
Yeah. And so, like, that was my answer, because I was like, you're asking,
You're
me?
asking you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, here's why. Here's why marriage is dissolved, because they don't understand that God created marriage with an intent.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I didn't know my audience. Like, I barely know. And one of the guys was like, absolutely. And another guy didn't say a word. And another guy was kind of like, yeah, that makes sense. and so probably a believer, the first guy who was like, absolutely. Yeah. Probably not a believer, the guy who didn't say a word at all. And the guy who was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Maybe a young believer or something who's, but you're asking me?
Yeah.
So that's what I mean is, like, if somebody comes to me who's not a believer and they're like, hey, I heard that you do marriage counseling. Can you help with that? I'm like, yeah, but I'm going to tell you about Jesus the whole time.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else to give you. I have nothing else to offer you. And so back to the holidays, we think, I'll put it this way, we think that the social interaction is the thing of value. The social interaction without Christ has no value.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. So those of us who are believers, everything we do ought to be infused with Christ.
Yeah. And maybe to your point earlier, let's not even say infused, because that would imply that that's not who you are, right? Right. If this is
just the overflow.
If this is who you are, that's a great way to say it. Let it be an overflow. Like, let this be an opportunity where you're overflowing.
Opportunity.
Dang it. I don't know how to not say it.
Because we're obligated.
Yeah.
And we end back there.
So I'm even thinking, like, I think there's some, like, Christian cultural morals that sometimes like get in the way of this a little bit. So for example, if I'm making a turkey for Thanksgiving on the smoker, which is like cheating.
I have no idea. I don't know if it's because I'm tired or my brain, because I don't feel tired. When you said if I'm making a turkey, my brain interpreted that as a nonsensical word. And I was like,
turkey?
Who makes a turkey? And so I chuckled. Like, I was like, because I was like,
when you chuckled, I was like, what, does he not think I do turkey?
Because in my head, I was like, who makes a turkey?
I guess I don't make a turkey.
No,
right?
but I'm not even saying that's not. My brain wasn't even thinking that. My brain was like, I don't even know what a turkey is. He's making something up.
It's the seed oils and Whataburger.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So if I've got it on the smoker, which is just cheating because it's a Traeger, if I'm sitting there like watching it smoke, like the Traeger's cooking it, right?
That's amazing though.
It is awesome. Yeah. I don't have the one yet that has the app controller. That'd be different. I'd be watching football looking at the app while I'm
Dude, that'd be amazing too. Do they have one with cameras inside too, where you can watch it smoke?
Not that I know of. Well, they probably do. Yet. Not a Traeger, but like if we're standing around the smoker, I'm probably going to be holding a beer with people, and we're going to be talking, and it's probably going to be conversations that end up to some degree about Jesus. Like it's going to turn that way, right? This is
something you're really good at, by the way. Like
beer?
Drinking beer.
When I've been at your place for any kind of cookout kind of thing, and you and Pierce are both people I'm incredibly comfortable with. I'm not comfortable with groups of people where I don't know people very well. Yeah. So I tend to gravitate towards you guys if y'all are the host, because that's just my personality.
Yeah.
But you're really good at standing around the grill, and there's a group of 10 or 12 guys around there talking to you, and you're hanging out, or you've got the ball game on, or both, because you've got the TV, right? And so like you're very good at creating a space where people are just comfortable.
They want to talk. Yeah. And so but like
I'm not great at that.
There are people who would be so taken aback by Micah standing there holding a beer that it gets in the way. I think it's similar to earlier in the podcast, us saying like if you're so worried about whether or not you should do a fall festival or whether or not you should give out candy, you're missing an opportunity.
Yeah.
You know, you could, if you want to have a conversation with me about alcohol later, let's have it later.
Yeah.
We'll sit down with a glass of wine. But sometimes I think our Christian cultural morals can get in the way of something that is there. Okay, let me just.
Most of us would not have sat down with the idol worshiper in 1 Corinthians 10.
No. Culturally?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like most of us today wouldn't do that. We wouldn't go to the idol worshiper's house for dinner. Because
today?
Because because of the same kind of moral basis that you're thinking of now. Like
most people, you think us three wouldn't?
Oh, we would.
That's what I'm saying. Like
most.
So people. Say it different. Yeah. So I'm not even sure it's most people now.
Okay.
I think that could be a separate conversation. I think that there's a weird break there. I think there's a smaller group of people who are holding on to those now than it used to be. I think we feel that way because we grew up in it. Pierce, even you're old enough to have grown up in that. But I think
absolutely.
That
makes sense.
Yeah. So, but I think that if cultural morals, right or wrong, in your own mind, are something that stands in the way of an I don't mind this. Of an opportunity to have community with people and have conversations with people where you because this is who you are.
Right.
You're gonna have gospel conversations. You're gonna talk about things God is doing. Then I'm gonna say it a Micah way. It is mind blowing to me that beer is more important to you than the gospel. Like, that's the most outrageous BS bunch of crap I've ever heard, that Christian morals are more important to you than the gospel. Like, that is outrageous. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, dude.
That's how I feel about it. Like, it really pisses me off.
I'm sorry, I zoned out for a minute.
Okay,
How do you feel about it?
Do it again. We'll have to do explicit lyrics on this one. But that's how intense I feel about it.
Beeping it just for fun.
Did you know they did that to Duck Dynasty one time? One of the guys? He didn't cuss, and they beeped it out to make it look like he cussed.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then he was probably like ticked about that.
Yeah, and he cussed him out. I'm just kidding. Not really. But like there are too many things I think that we miss in the holiday season as opportunities for community and gatherings because we're so caught up in the busyness or self, or it has to be just right, or whatever the chaos is. And I think we have to approach it from a wisdom perspective. If that means paper plates and plastic cups, if you don't like plastic, just don't use the paper straws. They're like really, really, really bad for you. Like if paper and plastic is what you need to do to save the time, because let's put it that way too. From the paper and plastic perspective, what if the difference is you get to spend an extra 2 hours with your family that you wouldn't if you didn't have to do the dishes?
Absolutely.
Yeah. That seems like a more important thing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Than having China out.
And I hate doing Thanksgiving dishes.
All right, let me be a little bit harsher too. If realistically the whole goal for you in the holidays is that people will be impressed by your house and your spread, you're an idiot. Yeah. Have nice stuff because you want to be hospitable. If the goal's about you, you're an idiot.
Yeah, it's not Jesus. It can't be about you and Jesus.
Now listen, I'm all for making things look cool. I build these dope boards because I want people. And if you need a board for Christmas or Thanksgiving, hit me up. I'll have to get your board. Like
he needs some money to give to his kids so that he can buy presents for other people.
That's right.
But like we clean the house up when people are coming over. We set things in place because we want it to be hospitable. I want it to look nice, not because I want people to think that Micah did a really good job, but because I want people to feel welcome when they come into my home.
Yeah.
So it's just a different person. So I'm not saying like leave your house dirty and don't put anything out to make it look nice. What I'm saying is don't make it about you.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's been one of the big shifts for us. I mean, I think when Hannah and I first got married, so much of our goal was how can we open up our home? And with the Princeton house, there wasn't a lot of opportunities to do it, but we tried to find it. There was one time where we set a whole bunch of card tables like diagonally into the living room from the far back window. But now we're at a place where we can open up a lot more frequently and things like that. And one of the ways that as we approach like buying furniture, getting a table and things like that, like we bought a secondhand table that was just long. Like if you wanted to buy a big table, tables are pricey, and we found a table that could fit like 12 people, and we're like, good, like this is huge tables on Facebook Marketplace. Like this guy was moving, worked out really well. But as we were getting chairs for it, because I hated the chairs it came with, it was those old school wooden uncomfortable chairs. I remember us having a specific conversation. Was like, as we host, I don't want people to worry about their chair they're sitting in. I don't want people to worry about a mess they might be making. I don't want anybody's mindset to be on anything else that's distracting them from here.
You don't
like
a white suede chair that like kids can't touch with their feet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like, I want people to be comfortable. It's the same mindset you expressed earlier, Ryan, about Christmas morning. Like, just come take a load off. Like, you don't have to worry in this environment. And like, in the midst of them just enjoying the food and enjoying the company, taking advantage of the opportunity that we have in this life, like however we want to phrase it, of showing people the gospel. And like, if they're so caught up on not trying to dirty a chair, then they're taken away from that moment. And I can't take advantage. I'll say take advantage of the moment. I don't mean that in a negative way, but like, share the gospel in that moment and serve them in that moment. So like,
you're
one of the
saying
ways,
that in terms of hospitality.
Absolutely. Yeah. So like, I just wanting to serve in such a way that can be centered on the things that we want it to be centered on. Like, I don't want people to have to worry or stress when they come to our place. Like, I want them to just enjoy themselves. And in the midst of that, they're free from a moment, whatever that might be. And we can talk about life. I can encourage, I can point to Jesus. Like,
yes, that environment has more to do with the people hosting than it does what's in the house.
What do you mean?
So like, you and Hannah could host in a shack.
With
really bad furniture.
Mm-hmm.
And you could make it feel hospitable and warm and welcome because it's more about the people. Now, what you're saying secondary to that is I'm trying to set the environment up the best I can. Because you could have someone who sets the house up where like it's very comfortable, but they're just pricks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then no one wants to be there.
That's 100% right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Which even at that point where when we didn't have a lot of money to buy anything new or anything back at Princeton, I bet if we were to ask a lot of people that came over and spent time with us, absolutely, it's still an environment where they could just
it's about the house. Mm-hmm. Yep. And there's something I think pretty cool about being able to set that in kind of environment in your home because it makes an impact on people. Feeding people, letting them feel like they're welcome. I love it when people come to my house and then they like put their feet up because it's like this sign of like I feel like this is almost homey for me. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Anyways,
talk about a lot of things.
Gospel. I know. I think at the core of it, a simple view is like, just make sure the gospel is the intention for everything you do around the holidays. We didn't even jump into this yet, but like, go ahead.
I was just going to say, are you guys tired yet of making everything about Jesus and the gospel? It feels like it's
well,
that.
actually, right.
It feels like it's that every week.
I'm even thinking like Christmas with kids.
Yeah.
Like, is your perspective, how can I remind the kids the joy of I don't think it's just celebrating Jesus. I want to celebrate Jesus all the time, but like there's something special about the story of God sending Jesus, that the Son has come, right? So like as a parent, like how can I continue to help shape my kids' mindset that this is this amazing opportunity for us to celebrate the coming of the Savior?
Sure.
That's a gospel mindset, right?
Yeah.
And I might give them 3 or more gifts even.
Yeah.
But like,
wow.
Or
more.
It doesn't even negate that. Hey, side note, hack. My wife comes from a family that likes to give lots of presents. Probably even in a way that it's like, sometimes I think people's perspective is that the value is how many presents they give, right? So Cammie, because, we didn't have a lot of money to buy Christmas presents, geniusly, what we've typically done is bought them like a big gift.
Something from IKEA, and you wrap each individual part.
That's right. Close. We either get like a big gift and maybe some things that are like bigger. I don't know what that means, but then she'll spend like, no joke, spend like $30 to $35 each every Christmas on a dollar store item for each of the boys. So, and we never put that stuff out until Christmas Eve. So they go to bed, when they wake up in the morning,
It looks like there's a lot of presents.
there's just presents
so
all
many
over the
presents.
place. And they're all dollar store stuff, right?
Yeah.
But there's something psychological about like, I'm opening a present and none of those things last more than 10 minutes afterwards, or they get thrown away, or the silly string gets shot and stays on the ceiling forever, and then I have to repaint later. But like the worst was when they shot on the outside of the house and I didn't know it, and then it was stuck, and that was bad.
Funny.
But there are ways to.
My mom used to do that with microwavable popcorn and socks, just so we would have enough presents.
I think it's a great idea. Like there are ways to do it creatively.
I was always like, Mom, just give me the $5.
Yeah. There was some clip I saw where a parent was like wrapping all the food that was in the kitchen, like wrapping all the produce, and they were just going to see their kids' reaction because they thought it'd be a typical like, really? Are you got to do this? And this boy opened, he goes,
the little kid.
He goes, an avocado, thanks, and he like holds it and he puts it aside. He keeps opening kids. He's just so excited for the avocado, man.
That's funny. That's funny. I think I'm with you. I think I would have rather them just send
give me
like
the $5.
just give them money,
absolutely.
but not everybody feels that way.
Yeah.
I know. I didn't know that there was like a tradition that my wife's family had. Like I wasn't smart enough or wise enough to ask her about those things before we got married. First Christmas, I bought her all these like pretty awesome Christmas presents. But her family had always done this special stocking where like you have like a really big stocking stuffed with like chapstick and pins and highlighters. And I didn't do a stocking for her. I didn't know about the stocking.
Oh, yeah.
It didn't matter.
I can't believe one of her
these
parents
other-
didn't tell you.
I know,
Yeah,
but like she was like real sad. I was like, I just bought you all this cool stuff. What are you sad about? You didn't get me a stocking.
I
was
need my
"What?
chapstick.
What?
Yeah.
What are you? I had no idea.
And it's funny.
Whoops.
That
It's
is-
just funny people's perspective, like the different perspective.
What
on
we
that.
do, because we get excited about Christmas when our boys were really little, especially. So what we do is they have stockings hanging by the fireplace, and the 5 nights before Christmas or leading up to Christmas, they get one gift a night in the stocking. So when they wake up the next morning, they have a stocking
cool.
gift. And because it was Michelle and I were like, we can't wait another week to give them presents.
you don't like that.
No.
You don't like that.
I'm like, let's give them a present right now.
That's really funny. That's
So-
really funny.
When we took them 5-6 years ago, when we took them to 7 years ago now, when we took them to Disney, like we bought the tickets, all that kind of stuff, and it was like 79 days away. I was like, let's try to make it a surprise. And I think by supper that night we had told them, hey, surprise!
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I can't do that with Riley because then that's all because she doesn't know concept of time yet.
Yeah,
So I'm like, hey, guess what we're doing in a month? The next day, oh my gosh, we're going today? We're doing this? And then she gets like sad and mad with me. And I'm like, no, I told you beforehand. This is way in the future. Yeah. Riley. Yeah, we do with stockings, which I feel like, I don't know if I brought that into the marriage with Hannah or if she also did it, but like my parents would always, like, if they got something for the stocking, they would just go ahead and put it in the stocking. So same thing with the presents, unless there was like Santa gifts or Christmas morning gifts that were specific. The presents, whenever they bought it, they'd wrap it, put it under the tree, like whatever. And so same thing with the stocking. But what was so much fun about the stocking growing up was we would like feel the stocking, which is so you can just peek in there if you really want to know. But then you're like, oh, this one's big. What could this be? And then it's usually like a calculator or something, just something silly that's put in there. Or my grandpa would like intentionally put long boxes and then put like a quarter inside the box because we'd feel it.
Excuse me.
Oh, they're doing yard work.
They're weed eating.
Yeah.
That's funny.
We're wrapping up
for
anyway.
a second. Yeah. Anyway.
One more stocking real quick.
Yeah.
My parents gave us all cash in our stocking one year. It was like $50.
Yeah.
I forgot about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they put the stocking up the next year, I had two $50 bills.
Hey.
And my brother and sister were like, how'd you get two? And I was like, oh, I forgot about that one from last year.
So
you're like, they like me better.
Yeah. There was one year they were cleaning up all the stockings, and there was some. You're right. Y'all mentioned the person doing dishes. Like there was always that one person's like cleaning something, and they were stashing all. They were like putting the stockings back in boxes and like taping them shut.
Whoa.
And somebody was like, wait, let's make sure where those are empty. And there was like 2 or 3 stockings that still had all the scratch off tickets in it, still had all the stuff in it, but it was flat. And so they were thinking, oh, it's just all piled up. And so, yeah, I think it was like a couple $100
What
in
kind of
winnings
Christians
and
are
stuff.
you buying lottery tickets?
I mean, sorry, it was
Wow.
some pagan heathen household. I just happened to be there.
That's actually a really good idea. That'd be fun.
The scratch offs?
It was a Christian scratch off.
That's right.
When it says it was like, you win because Jesus died.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
It's a track. I'm gonna get my kids those $100 bill tracks. Put in their
You
stockings.
just get like dozens of them.
That's messed up.
Messed up. Well, hey, I enjoy this conversation. This is a fun conversation. Simpler view, Micah. Did you already say it?
Yeah. Like,
Gospel.
Yeah.
make the gospel a point of the holidays.
Okay, let me start talking about other stuff. I apologize. So, you know who I have no need to apologize for because our relationship is so great, Stephen. I love Stephen so much.
That was a good one.
We're at the Garden Audio as always. Stephen makes this sound so great. So the reason why you've just been enjoying our voices in your ear holes this whole time, Stephen, that's the whole reason why. Stephen's great. Go wherever you're listening or watching or social media pages. Just comment on there how much you love Stephen. If you're on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple, wherever you are, be sure to hit subscribe or like or follow, whatever the terminology is there, just so you can get notified for all of our episodes. But also it helps aid in the numbers of the podcast, not for the sake of our own benefit, but for the sake of the community growing and for the sake of the algorithm and stuff like that. If wherever you're listening or watching knows that you are listening and watching and you're actively involved by comments and subscriptions and stuff like that, then they will plug this into more recommended listening and stuff like that, which for the past few weeks we've seen in numbers jump. And so I wonder how we're getting plugged into the algorithm and stuff like that. So it all helps. It's all interesting, and it's always adapting. It's always changing. So we're thankful for you guys being plugged in. Check out the show notes. Check out the links below where you can follow, subscribe, see what's going on with Simpler Bible, see what's going on with Micah's ministry, see what's going on with the 456 as we're wrapping up 2024, new building coming in 2025, which is very exciting. So if you want any of those updates with all the ministries that we're plugged into, there's lots of ways to get involved. We are so thankful for you guys and so thankful that we have these opportunities to have these conversations here and with you guys outside of the podcast. And hey, as always, keep Christ as core. What could be simpler than that? Catch y'all next week.
Bye.